Okay, so last time we looked at linear patterns and what made a linear pattern and how we can recognize a linear pattern. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to make linear rules. Now the last section in our homework on Education Perfect was trying to get us just to guess at linear rules, and I didn't want to do that because there's a distinct, easy pattern for finding a linear rule for anything. So that's what we're going to talk about today and how to find it. Very quick and easy, but you do have to memorize it. You can't just bring this back if you don't practice it. So make sure that you memorize it. Okay? So here we go. So what we have for finding a linear rule is we have a bit of a formula. And it's T equals A times N. Remember that anytime you have two letters stuck together like that, that means multiplication, plus or minus B, okay? Where T is the term, so remember that's the actual number, okay? A is the common difference, which is something that we looked at last time, so you ought to be able to find the common difference. Remember, you're just subtracting one after another. N is the number or order. Remember that we looked at that, the first, the second, the third. So I know if it's an N or a T. T's are just numbers, but number N's are always numbers that denote an order or a place value. Let's go one further, 100th, etc. Okay? And B is simply a number in the rule. And we'll talk about how to find B. Okay? So there you go. You have your term, your common difference, your number that defines the order or place value, and then finally B is just a number in the rule. And notice that B can either be add or subtract. And you're going to learn how to determine which one. It's a really easy process, okay? So we're going to look at a couple of different patterns. First, we're going to determine, are they linear patterns? Then we're going to determine, how to build the rule for them, if they are indeed linear patterns. And then you're going to have some Education Perfect homework. Okay, so let's look at a couple of patterns. Now, I want to warn you that these patterns, some of them are increasing, which means goes up. Decreasing means they go down. And some of them use negative numbers. So you will have to brush off your skills working with integers, negative numbers. Okay, so here we go. So let's look at our first pattern. It's 6, 9, 12, 15, ... Okay? Now, we can put this into a chart, which is one of the skills that we learned, which is very important skill, by the way. Remember, we have our first number, our second number, our third number, and our fourth number, and these go on infinitely, but this is enough. We just need the numbers in the chart that we're using in our pattern. Our first number is 6, our second number is 9, third number is 12, fourth number is 15. So remember, we looked at how to put these things into a table, right? This is called a table. And it's part of our exercises from last time. Now, sometimes you'll get the numbers from a sequence like this, where they just write down the numbers. But remember, you can also get the numbers from picture patterns, right? And in this case, remember, the sticks aren't touching, so that means you're counting the sticks. If you have this, that means the sticks are touching, so you're counting the shapes. So be very careful about which one you're using. So you're going to have both in your homework. But you can change these into number series, which you can then put directly into a table and make it nice and neat. So what we're going to do first is see what the common difference is, if there is one, because remember, not every pattern is linear. Okay, And remember, we called that common difference A. So just start subtracting. 9 minus 6 gives us 3. 12 minus 9 gives us 3. 15 minus 12 gives us 3, right? Just remember, it's that one minus that one. Then just keep going, all right? And you'll notice that we do indeed have a common difference of 3. So we know that this pattern is linear. So let's think about our formula. T equals A times N plus or minus B. T is our term. That's just going to stay T. It's just a general form. We're just going to always have T equals as our form. Our common difference is 3. So we know that our A is 3. N always just stays N. That just means the number, any number, and it allows you to find any number in a sequence. So now what we have to do is we have to find this plus or minus B part, okay? And that's really easy once you have the common difference. To find B, just ask yourself, what would you add or subtract? So be careful, because sometimes you could be adding numbers, sometimes you could be subtracting numbers. What would you add or subtract to A to get the first term? And it's as simple as that, okay? It's always based on that first term, so don't try to get creative and use other numbers. This first term is the one we're looking at, and that's the one we're interested in, right there, okay? So what would you add 3 plus what equals 6? Well, clearly, 3 plus 3 is equal to 6. So my missing number is plus 3. And you can test this all you want to. So let's do the second term here. So 9 is equal to 3 times 2 plus 3. 9 equals 3 times 2 is 6 plus 3. So 9 equals 9. So it does check, okay? And as long as you're careful, you don't need to run that check. But if you're worried at all, then check it, okay? Now again, remember though, you won't always be adding to get these. Sometimes you'll have to subtract. If the number is smaller than your A, then you're going to have to end up subtracting. So we'll look at what happens with that when that's the case as well. Right? Let's look at another one. Okay, here we have our linear pattern. We already know it's linear, but we'll still test it. First thing I want to do is build a table. So let's build a table of values. Remember, we have our n's and our t's, the number of the term and the terms. We have 4 of them, so we'll need 4 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. That never changes, by the way, so don't mess with it. 24, 18, 12, and 6. First, we'll find our common difference, our A, and we do that by subtracting. So it's 18 minus 24, which gives us negative 6. So be careful. This pattern is decreasing. So our A is going to be a negative number if that's happening. So next, we'll do 12 minus 18 equals negative 6, and 6 minus 12 equals negative 6. Use your calculator if you're in doubt about the negative numbers. Right now, we're focusing on the pattern. We can work on negative numbers later. Okay? So our common difference, A, is negative 6. So let's just rewrite our formula every time. That way you can memorize it easier. T stays T. Our A is our common difference, so that's negative 6. We put our N. Now what we have to do is find our B. Okay? And again, B is always based on this first number. Okay? So negative 6 plus what would equal 24. Okay? Now, we might want to rearrange this because negative 6 means we're going to be subtracting, right? So what minus 6 would be 24. It's perfectly fine to rearrange this if you want to be able to make it make a little bit more sense because you have a negative number in this case. So what number minus 6 would give you 24? Okay, and the only number that would make that true is the number 30. So that means that our missing part up here is plus 30. Okay, so it gets a little trickier when you have negative numbers, but again, that just means that you're subtracting the numbers. Okay, all right. Let's look at one more. Okay, this pattern, 1, 7, 13, 19, ... Write our table. Four values. We need 4 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 7, 13, 19. Notice that this pattern is increasing, which means I know that my A is going to be a positive number this time. If it's decreasing, it'll be negative. If it's increasing, it'll be positive. So let's get our common difference, A. So it's 7 minus 1, which is 6. 13 minus 7, which is 6. 19 minus 13, which is 6. So we're getting a common difference here, so we know it's a linear pattern, and our common difference is 6. So again, our pattern, our formula is T equals A times N plus or minus B. T equals, we know our A, which is our common difference, so T equals 6 times N. Now I need to know what my B is. To do that, I just think 6 plus or minus something has to equal 1. Well, I can't add anything to 6 to get a 1, but I can certainly subtract something from 6 to get a 1, right? And again, I'm using 1 because that's the first number in my pattern. So 6 minus 5 equals 1, correct? So that means my B is minus 5. So just think about what number would you add or subtract to your A to get your B. Remember, that's your A. And that's your, I'm sorry, not your B, your first term, T. Okay? Couldn't be much easier, guys, but you've got to practice, and you've got to make sure that you really practice these. My advice is that if you do one and you get it wrong, that you go back over the same one. Don't go to the next one. Do the same one over and over and over until you can get it right. It's practicing one of them until you can get it right and really understand that makes it work. Okay? So you have some some homework on Education Perfect. Okay? And it's just entitled Linear Rules. And that's what you'll be working on until I see you again. Thanks.